There's that freedom of entrepreneurship, as you know, but as someone who then walks that line between tell me what to do and don't tell me what to do, it has taken me a lot of time, and I'm calling it experimentation, to really figure out how to run my day and my time so that I don't have a list of 25 things to do that I expect to be done perfectly. I also don't then just sit on the couch and do nothing because I'm overwhelmed. But figuring that out, and as entrepreneurs, like, we've got to keep taking steps forward, whether we have ADHD or not.
Dr. Jennifer Dall, welcome to the Resilient Entrepreneurs Podcast. We're so excited to have you here today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Laura and Vicky. I'm so excited to be talking with you today.
Awesome. Well, let's kick it right off with the big question. If I were to hand you a magic wand today, what change would you like to make in the world?
We'd love for us to all be accepting of neurodivergence, especially the people with neurodivergence. I think that we can talk about this later. Sometimes we get a little down on ourselves about it, but there are some beautiful, wonderful things about it. And I would love for us to just accept this part of ourselves and grow with it, is what I would love.
So, why is that important to you personally that there is more acceptance in the world?
Because I think there's often not a lot. Information and acceptance is growing. And also, I think within us, it can be hard to accept those parts of us, especially if we did not know until we were a little bit older what was going on, because sometimes the stories we are told or tell ourselves about what's going on aren't as positive, and aren't as accepting of some of the things like our creativity and our ability to just come up with all kinds of ideas that can be great and can also sometimes be frustrating to other people in other situations. So I think just seeing with myself the journey I've taken to understand it and grow with it has been wonderful. And when I see this in other people, I get happy and they are much happier.
Yeah. Can you share with us a little bit about that journey and how you do help people and the work that you're doing today?
Sure. Until a few years ago, I had no definitive idea of what was going on, having grown up in a certain time. And even now, people think about ADHD and they think about like you 8-year-old boys who are bouncing all over the place and maybe don't make the best decisions. And so other parts of it were not seen. So, I did well, usually. I was smart, I was accomplished, but there were other things going on that I didn't know what was happening. I went into education. I was a teacher. I taught students with special education, with ADHD, and also general education students. And I have many degrees in all of this. And I started to get to a point where I would start to question as the world learned more and I learned more. Maybe I have ADHD, and I would ask people who should know, and they would all say, "Oh no, not you. You do all these things. You've managed a house. You have master's degrees. You have a doctorate. You have all these things. There's no way," because they're all still thinking about it in a certain way. And just over time, as I learned more and more, and I looked into myself, like I really said, I do these sorts of things. What is this about? And did research and learned about those, I became more convinced. It took a little bit of a battle to talk to some doctors and get to be taken seriously, because a lot of the things for ADHD can be seen as other things, and doctors don't know either. Unless that's their specialty, they really have very little education. The pandemic hit, and I think everybody got a whole lot more information. And finally, I realized that it was time to make that case, to really talk to a doctor. And I was more confident in myself. Like, I was able to show up. I had done all this research, all this work. And so I could say, this is what I think is going on, and this is why. And then they kind of had to listen to me. I know that other times other people can have a hard time getting that taken care of. They think it's other things, or it can be hard. It's getting a little easier now, probably, but during the pandemic and all of that, getting into doctors was hard. And it costs money and it takes time and it's a pain. You really have to be sure of yourself. You really have to be more confident. And I was lucky in that I had a lot of education and a lot of experience, and that's not the case for everybody.
I love that you've recognized that. And I'm curious, Jen, what did the diagnosis give you?
Um, I think it gave me, this is just so hard to explain, um, some, not confidence, but just acceptance. Like, I've been telling you this, and now here it is. Was it a magic wand? Absolutely not. It was not the magic wand, Laura, that you like to talk about. But it was within me a little bit stabilizing, and with people who I care about who will listen and accept it, it was also kind of a starting point of understanding and conversations both with people who are also realizing that maybe they had ADHD and how it impacted them, and also people who have to deal with me, who live with me, who work with me, and conversations, some of the best conversations about why I do certain things and why I need certain things, but then also they do certain things and they need other things. It's not all about me and my specialness.
Hmm. So I'm hearing that it gave you a common language, or some kind of
Yes,
a language, some way to start talking about how you think versus how others think. And so
yes,
each other can start to understand each other a little deeper.
yes. And I think it's helped me have more conversations. I think I understand that better than a lot of people I know. And so I'm able to open that conversation as opposed to you might get into a conversation with people with somebody and you're on different planes and you're talking across hatches and it's just not making sense. I've gotten better at stepping back and saying, okay, so this is how I'm seeing this. This is what I'm thinking. Can you tell me what you see and what you're thinking? Because we're not just arguing because we're being difficult. We're not understanding each other. It's like we're speaking another language in certain ways or variations on a language. You know, like what the French in Quebec is different than the French in France. They say so. You know, different dialects or even just within the US, you know, this word means one thing, this word means another thing. And if you don't realize you're talking about different things, then you just get frustrated and upset and things don't go as well.
You think you don't understand each other, or you don't, you're just not, you're not aligning. But actually, you could very well be aligning if you were just talking about it differently.
Yes.
So I think it's important for our audience also for us to just unpack, not too deep in a medical realm, but in the practical sense of what is ADHD. Because when I bring it up in conversations, I'm still getting people saying, "Oh, it's just a screen time thing," or, "Oh, it's just a focus thing," or it's as if it's a behavior that's been learned and therefore can be learned to do it differently. Whereas I think it's important to understand that ADHD, in my understanding, and you're going to enlighten us, is that our brain scans
Mhm.
even look different. We think differently. I don't know what "we" is because I don't know if I'm ADHD or not, but people think differently, and as a coach, I know that people think differently anyway through conditioning, but this is a little different.
This is the way our brains are wired and how we think and perceive and see things and process things. And for anyone who's, you know, I mean, I guess anyone, not just anyone who's older, but anyone, you know, you talked about the conditioning. When we were growing up, we may have been told different things about it. It's like some of the things, especially with girls, why it's not noticed is some of their behaviors, I think, tend to get looked at as behaviors, right? You're forgetful, you're lazy, you didn't do this, and not like, well, there's a reason for it. It's just like you are this way, you are bad, or you're not so good because you didn't remember to do this, where it's that our minds process things differently, prioritize things differently. We have a lot of interest based behaviors. So if you notice with your clients, other people, if they're really interested in something, we can deep dive. We are all in for it. And things that we're not interested in, this is hard for people to understand, but it can actually be kind of painful in a way, like the extent to which you just can't do it. You just can't bring yourself to do it. And, you know, we can work on it, we can have conversations, we can try to get better, but it's just this simple. I can do this really well and I can't do this really well. And that can be also really frustrating for yourself and for others who are watching you, because this is where like you're lazy or you're difficult. Well, you did this great. You did this when I asked you, you did it on time, you did it perfect, you enjoyed it, and this is not happening. And so there's this disconnect that people don't understand. And even within ourselves, we may not understand unless we've learned a lot about it and say, yeah, that's the way I am. Not to excuse it, and not that I shouldn't do this anyway, if it's something that is important and I've said I'll do and I need to do. But this difference where if there's an interest there, I'm all in. And if there's not, it's hard. It's hard in a way that I think other people don't see. They can't see.
Yeah, I feel like there's lessons in here for anyone,
Yes.
whether they're ADHD or not, whether they even suspect that they might be ADHD or not. I think there's a lesson in here for everyone, is to know your strengths,
Yes.
know what comes easy. By all means, lean into that. And when we come across the things that we still have to do that don't come easy, that do feel hard and painful, in your words, then I think that word that you used earlier about acceptance and saying, hey, this is something that I find really
Mhm.
challenging. And I know that I want to do it anyway. But I feel like that acceptance softens the path to getting the thing done.
I agree. And also, if you have that acceptance in yourself and you're able to tell the other person what's going on, I think that that can lead to good conversations, and they would hopefully then soften towards you a little bit. Like, this is the reason why those boxes are still in the trunk and I haven't dropped them off to the donation center yet. It's partly because they're in the trunk and I don't see them except for the twice a week when I open the trunk. They are completely gone from my mind. But also, so then softening it towards me and trying to find a way to remember to go do it. And if somebody else is upset that I haven't done it, well, maybe we can work together to find a way to get this done.
Or maybe that's on them.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's that too.
The way I live life is maybe that's on them. If it's so important to them, they'll make sure it gets done.
If it's that important, they could just do it themselves. Although we may have a tendency to overcommit and say, oh, yeah, I'll do this. Look, I have my list of 25 things I'm doing, which, if you know anyone with ADHD, you know what that's about. Uh, and the intention is there. I want to do it all. I want to be that person. It just doesn't always happen.
Yeah. So, of course, I'm going to come at this from like a mom perspective who has, teenage kids. Um, it's very interesting to think about, the behaviors that we might be frustrated because our kid is exactly that way, all in on one thing, but refusing or continuously forgetting to do the chore that they're supposed to do. And I can also flip that on a leader of a company who has an employee that's the same way. So what is the best way for those of us in those positions, others parents or CEOs or entrepreneurs, whatever, dealing with somebody who is that? How do you help them? How do we create an environment that means we can all work together and get what needs to be done, as well as I think it's important to support the thing that the person who you are supporting is excelling at too, because you don't
Mhm.
want to take away from that either.
Okay, let me remember all the parts of this question. I think that one of the main things is knowledge and understanding. So you, as a parent, as the person themselves, as an employee, as a boss, as an entrepreneur, learning up to date information about ADHD and neurodivergence, what it is, what it means now, and then also learning about that person. If you're talking about a particular person, your child, your secretary, whoever this is, having the safety and the comfort where you can have that conversation. Like, they may be able to admit, I struggle with these things and we need to talk about how to do this. Or you can say, as mom, as boss, I struggle when this is not happening. And you put it out there, not confrontational, but let's talk about it. And another thing is to look at priorities, like what's really important. Is it important that your daughter puts the dishes away, or is it important that somebody does it and your daughter does something? So maybe there's a way at looking at all the things that have to happen and picking them or realigning them so that, and letting her be a part of it. So she's, I'm just talking about your daughter. I don't know if you have a daughter. um, like, we are all going to contribute here, and these are all the things. And so we need to divide these up. And it can be, and some of the reasons, sometimes it's sensory, like something like dishes, not everybody, but like some people with ADHD and neurodivergence, um, they have sensory issues like noise or the way things feel. Um, and that could be a part of it too. Maybe she doesn't, I'm picking on the dishes. I don't know where this came from. She doesn't want to do the dishes, but like maybe touching, like, I'm sorry, food is just like this, like I talked about things like physically being hard. Maybe it just like physically does things to her. And so, okay, somebody else is going to do that. And you instead are going to do this. And so then the same thing at work, some knowledge, some self-knowledge as the parent or the boss, self-knowledge about where your lines are, like what really needs to happen and how it needs to happen. And you can't fire your kids, but maybe the employee, it's not a fit. Some things are more optional than others.
Mm. And also, I was recently working with someone in that very situation who was having challenges at work because they were being misunderstood. They were being asked to do things. They really weren't getting what they were being asked to do. They didn't realize that they didn't get what they were being asked to do. They were doing what they thought they were being asked to do, if you're still following. And there was a big kerfuffle. And actually, it led to a potential loss of employment until there was a conversation around this person needs support. This is just, in fact, I don't know if you'd be surprised to know this, but in Australia, ADHD is considered a disability under the Employment Act, which means that the employee, when requesting support, must be given support, must be given appropriate support. And an employer cannot just release an employee simply because of their performance if they are diagnosed ADHD, and that's the issue for performance. If it's attitude or whatever, there's a different story. But if it's specifically about they're not doing their job effectively because of this condition, then they must get support for it, like any other disability. I really love that word, but that's the word they use.
Yeah, and it's true in
Mm.
the United States also. And I think that makes me think of another point, in that as adults, as people, sometimes we aren't as clear as we think we are. So whether we're talking to a child, giving instructions to an employee, or working on a relationship, like we talked about before, are we saying the same words? I'm trying to remember what the name of the show is. Schitt's Creek. Do you guys get that? Okay. The fold in the cheese thing, everybody knows there's a scene where the recipe says fold in the cheese, and they're trying to figure out what fold in the cheese means, because how do you know how to fold in the cheese if you don't actually know what that means? So you could be saying, do this, or like clean your room. Well, what does a clean room really look like to you and to them? What does, you know, an email or a project or any other thing, or in a relationship, supporting each other, what does that really mean if we're not clear that we're talking about the same thing?
I feel like this is something that we can bring into every single conversation, every single relationship, every single employee employer relationship. This is about kindness. This is about taking time with each other. I'm not
Hmm.
diminishing that ADHD is a thing, but I think we can learn from these conditions and these experiences that you're having and that you've studied. We can learn from it and bring it into everyday life for everybody, because they're just really great basic principles of communication in my world.
They are. Acceptance, because I may have ADHD and be this way, but you're not perfect. Sorry. There's something, whether it's diagnosed or not, there's some way that you are most likely not absolutely perfect. And so these conversations, one thing with a lot of people, like neurodivergent ADHD people, is this sort of line between, I need specific instructions of what to do, but don't tell me what to do. And you may have known, you laugh. So there's this line, and then this openness with relationships where you feel you can have it, where the other person can then figure out and help you figure out, and you all figure out where that middle road is, where I won't get mad because I feel like you're telling me what to do. And you won't get mad because I'm not doing what you wanted me to do. But this line of, texting me before I leave, can you remember to bring the bag I left at your house? Thanks. Yes, I know you told me and it's on my mind and I'm getting ready to leave. So thank you for doing that. Understanding that if you really want that bag brought back, it's up to you also to make sure you remind me and me not to get upset and be like, leave me alone. Stop bothering me, mom.
Yeah, this is about self-compassion too, right? Because if someone reminds you to do something because they know that's going to help both of you, then can we just talk about perfection for a minute? I mean, you said you're not perfect either. Like, isn't this the big thing? Don't we come down hard on ourselves, especially as entrepreneurs, I'm going to say. I think it's true across the board, but we're talking about entrepreneurs and two entrepreneurs. We become obsessed with perfection, whether it's in our work or what we deliver to a client or how we're showing up. Hello, ladies. Can we just take a pause?
I keep reminding myself, like, B work, or, our grades are A, B, C, D. I don't know for you. Like, B work is okay most of the time, and it's probably better than I think it is, you know? Um, that kind of thing. I went from 25 years working in a school district after having, been a student forever, which is very structured, which is very, bells and dates and all this stuff, to being an entrepreneur. And I have to tell you, like, there's that freedom of entrepreneurship, as you know, but as someone who then walks that line between tell me what to do and don't tell me what to do, it has taken me a lot of time, and I'm calling it experimentation, to really figure out how to run my day and my time so that I don't have a list of 25 things to do that I expect to be done perfectly. I also don't then just sit on the couch and do nothing because I'm overwhelmed. Um, but figuring that out, and as entrepreneurs, like, we've got to keep taking steps forward, whether we have ADHD or not. But yeah, that mixture of structure.
You figured that out? You figured out
Yes.
that time thing? You should bottle that up and sell it. Every entrepreneur wants that.
Well, I'm working on what works for me. And yes, I do want to write a book and do some stuff with it. I've found what works for me. And that's the important thing also with ADHD or anything. What works for one person doesn't necessarily work for somebody else. And so sometimes you get told, well, my sister-in-law takes this pill, or my sister-in-law gets this calendar, or my sister-in-law this. And you're like, that's great. I can look at it and it might work, but it also might not work. And it might not work for your sister-in-law in 2 months, by the way. Just throwing that at you. So there's lots of, people want like the magic tool, and like, well, let's look at what you do well, because somewhere in there's something that you do well. Let's look at why you're here, whether you're diagnosed or you think something that you heard or saw tickle something in your brain. Okay, so what makes you think or know that you have ADHD? And that's probably a good place just to just start working on something. What's going to make your life a little bit better? Is it a low-hanging fruit that, we can just do this easy? Or is it something big in a relationship, in your job, that's really impacting you, and you still don't take the whole thing on at once? We tend to want to do that. We will, here's this 500-page book and I'm going to read the whole thing and do everything in it, which lasts like 5 minutes. But like, let's just find little successes. And I'm sure with the things you do the same thing. Like, we have to start little successes, and then we build on it, because then we start to feel better. Oh, I did this. And then you also realize what you can't do or you don't want to do. And it's okay to have other people do things. It's okay to hire someone to do something, because you can't perfectionism and you can't do it all.
Yeah, that's such a good lesson, and it's so important reminder for entrepreneurs, especially when starting out, is to lean
Mhm.
in on what you are really good at. And I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, probably especially the neurodivergent ones, it's the creativity, it's that thinking outside of the box that
Mhm.
makes you such a great entrepreneur in the first place, because it's what is your secret sauce. But that means there's going to be other areas where you're not going to be as strong. So that's where you need to look for the help. And as a, recovering perfectionist and do it all myselfer, like I know how hard it is. I will say firsthand, I know how hard it is to hand off something to somebody else to take on, but I also have understood how necessary it is. And it's,
Yes.
yeah, it's a tough thing to learn, but know thyself, right? I think that's really,
Hmm.
really key. But I like that, you really advocate for women to, especially, or in those, to learn who they are and
Hmm.
understand, if they are neurodivergent, what that means and how to lean in, how to get the help and the support. So tell people how you support people in that.
What I'm doing a lot of right now is short coaching sessions. I call them quick win coaching, under this theory that I'm finding really works for me and the people I know, that we're going to tackle little things. It's really easy to sign up for year-long courses, and I'm not knocking those in any way. I'm For me to offer and for me to give the best results, I find it's better when it's small things, even if they're repeated, because you have a shorter time to focus on it. You make a much more reasonable goal and you can find more success. I'm working on smaller projects, smaller focus on one aspect. I'm working on a big ADHD book that, even to write it, this is sort of a little overwhelming. Whereas I find much more creativity and enjoyment in making small things. I made an SOS ADHD SOS card deck, which is just like short, quick ideas, which I think that also is a way that we learn better, actually, or some of us do. So I'm working on things like this. And then the lessons I have learned about creating structures and schedules in my time, I really am trying to bring this together, um, because I think it's brilliant. And I think it's useful, and I think it's flexible. I think that's some of the best things that you read about are those that are also then flexible. It's not like this is the 5 steps and you have to do these 5 steps exactly like this or you've failed. It's these are the ideas. How does this work with you? And let's make this, keeping in mind that life interferes too. One of the things I talk about is +1. So whether it's there's a growing mutual diagnosis of ADHD and autism. You can also have learning disabilities, um, stress, grief, life. These all take on. I was in an unfortunate accident about a year ago, and I now have a TBI, which I'm dealing with also, that I never ever imagined would happen. So how do these work together? And how do we bring it all together into you to find things that work for you? This is where I really feel passion about, is that sort of thing, because I know along my road from both grief and everything and ADHD, is when I've heard on podcasts or I've read articles or spoken to people who I feel like really speak to me, like they get it, or even if it's just some little part, I understand what you're saying, and that, like, gives you hope. That's like, oh, there's somebody who gets it.
Yeah.
So that's my passion, I guess.
Yeah, I think people out there are going to need some hope in the future. We all need hope for sure. I'm wondering if, if there's somebody out there, perhaps a woman entrepreneur, because women, as you mentioned, are diagnosed or not diagnosed or diagnosed later because their symptoms present very differently. Can we talk about that and try to unpack that a little bit so we understand it better?
So, without making huge generalizations, women, it tends to be more internal. So when we talk about attention deficit and hyperactivity, it's not that you can't pay attention, it's that you pay attention differently. And so while maybe you look at that universal 8-year-old boy whose energy, his hyperactivity is very out, you may find that women with ADHD, it's up here. So your brain is just going. The idea is, like you were mentioning, Laura, like neurodivergence, you could come up with a bazillion ideas, like I get in that idea mode and it is all over the place, but it's all up here. And so sometimes girls or women, they're sitting there in class or in a meeting, and we've learned how to look, right? We've learned how to put that I'm paying attention face on, but our minds are hyperactive elsewhere. It is thinking about anything and everything else. And so people don't see that, because a lot of girls or women have also learned to be quiet to play that role. For girls who it's harder, who speak out more, I think they get more labeled as behavior problems, as perhaps emotional disturbance diagnoses, as things like that. Or if, it's a lot of work, it's tiring. It ADHD is tiring when you're really in there masking and really doing all that. It's tiring, and so that can come across as you go to a doctor and you say, "I'm tired and I'm distracted and I have a hard time focusing," and then they go to depression, they go to anxiety, and oftentimes they start throwing medicine for that out instead of looking at anything else. So I think we aren't used to looking at girls. A lot of the research was done by men on boys, like a lot of things. And so it looks at a certain thing. And it's only really recently, what, the last, I don't know, 20 years, whatever, or less, where we've started looking at women. And, like for me, so, and I had a lot of knowledge, and it still took me a really long time to really be able to go into a doctor and stand up for myself and assert myself and say these things.
That's okay. Just the difference
Yeah.
between the genders and how women present with symptoms. And maybe what are some, if some women are like, well, do I or don't I? Maybe they're questioning themselves right now. What are maybe some signs that they should look out for or want to talk to a doctor about?
Right. So there's the classic ones about trouble with organization. There's also emotional regulation. And this is another one that gets hard to see what's really going on with ADHD. Emotional dysregulation can mean that you're emotionally reacting stronger than other people do to some things. Something small might really hurt a lot. What I go to a lot is you're starting to think this for a reason. You've read something, somebody has said something, and taking a look at that little factor. Is it somebody saying, "Oh, you're always late," or "You can't keep track of things"? And how long has that been going on? Like, if you really step back and put the stories aside, if it's ADHD, it's probably been going on one way or another most of your life. It may not have been labeled that way. You may not have seen it that way. But if you really step back, and maybe there's somebody in your life you trust who's been around, and have that conversation, like, have I always done this? Because then that's more likely to be ADHD versus just life stress, that kind of stuff. um, People say, "Oh, people with ADHD are always late," but that's not entirely true. Sometimes we're very early, and it all comes down to this inability to, like, really see time. So because as a good girl, I don't want to be late, I'm early, but not like early. Like some people might be like, "Oh, I just try to get someplace 10 minutes early." But like I'm early because there's this gap in time that I can't explain, that okay, I just have to be there really early. And so then you start bringing a book, and then you're the person who's always early with a book. But that's a way of compensating. But you know what? That's been there my whole life. And if I don't do that, then I am. It's like, "Oh, the appointment's at 10 and it's 9:55. Uh-oh. You just, this time, just this comprehension of time that is so hard to explain. So has it been there all along? When you were in school and you sat there and a teacher was talking and lecturing, were you somewhere else, and not just because there was some crisis going on in your life, or there was a bird outside? But like, is this an ongoing pattern? And if you're talking to a sibling or a parent or a friend who's known you a long time, do they see it also? So I would kind of look at, like, if you're looking at the difference, is it just life stress right now? um, or is this maybe ADHD? If you really sit back, has this been there?
Hmm. I love those symptoms, and I think it brings awareness to our listeners, our viewers, to maybe consider, like, what is your pattern of behavior that you might have just been putting down to, I mean, it's still true. That's just who I am, right? But maybe we beat ourselves up about it and go, "Oh, I wish I didn't have to do. I wish I wasn't like that. I wish I wasn't like that." And now it's coming back to acceptance, to saying, "Well, these are symptoms of something else." And so understanding that gives us that little extra step towards acceptance and knowing how to work with it rather than against it. And I was talking with someone about this very topic just a couple of days ago, and they mentioned that there's four things that are very typical in neurodiversity, and that's time, which you just mentioned, right? Just this struggle with time, and also a struggle with consequences. Just we don't think. Yeah, I see the smile. I see the smile. I'm going to give you the other two as well. Sequencing, the sequence of things, which might feel like it's related to time, but it's not. And also, the other thing that she mentioned was that neurodivergent people are more likely to break tech, literally break tech. Like people struggling with tech, that could be, it is as crazy as it sounds, that could be the symptom that lets you into that door that says, maybe this is how my brain is wired.
I haven't heard of that last one, but definitely the other three, impulsiveness, you know, and people have no idea why you did it, and you can't even tell them. It seemed like a really good idea. And the sequencing, which is part of what I'm figuring out, I can come up with these grand ideas of what I want to create and some unrealistic deadline of when that's going to happen, because breaking it down is hard, and sequencing this has to happen first, has to happen very much. Those are all things. The only thing with breaking tech is like, don't give me a spreadsheet because I will break it somehow. But I'm not sure if that's what the person meant, or like physically breaking it. But
I think it's honestly because the world is made for people who are neurotypical. And so if your brain thinks differently, it's not going to work along the path of how, I mean, tech is made in an intuitive way. It's made for neurotypical people to do things a certain way, to follow a certain way of thinking. If you're not thinking that way, then how is it going to support you? How is it going to work for you?
and they're often developed that way. Now that I was volunteering at a place, a humane society that used a particular program that I think they all thought was quite logical. And I just had a really, really, really hard time with it because, like, well, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't flow. This doesn't make any sense in my brain of how I would do things. And so then that kind of leads to the entrepreneur. Then, when you're doing it well and you feel good about yourself and you have freedom and some success, you can kind of make things the way you want them to, and also try to then hire people to do things like bookkeeping, paperwork. Oh, that's painful. So I hire somebody. And even something like sorry, social media, like that's fun. And I will say, okay, I'm going to create this whole sequence on something, and it doesn't happen. So it is much better. I realized I've hired somebody who gets me, who understands me, and who also asks, what do you need as a person with ADHD? What do you need? We get to know each other. She knows what I'm like. I give her some content, and then she does the boring stuff of putting it out there, but then it happens because I can come up with the ideas, and this leads me more time to create the things that I think people
Yeah.
need.
That's it. I mean, that's it. That's exactly it. And that's what we all need, is to figure out what support do we need so that we can operate it as our best selves, find our superpowers. Because so many successful, incredibly successful entrepreneurs are neurodivergent. And, they have leaned in to their superpower, figured out what they do the best, and then found a team to surround them to do the rest. What That's it, right? And
And that's permission. And I think women is a lot. I'll only speak for myself here, but this was a battle within me of, oh, wait, it's okay for me to pay someone to do things. Well, yes, it frees me up. And you know what? I'm supporting somebody else. Like I'm helping her too.
yeah,
And so
that's the mindset, I think, of a
Giving.
woman especially. It's always that I should be doing it all first. But when you can flip it into, wait, I can serve others by helping them, by employing somebody else, by giving them an opportunity, by helping them learn a new skill or whatever it might be. It's just a flip of the mindset out of, oh, listen, I should be hiding, I should be shamed to be hiring. So it's crazy, but we put this on, we've heard this from so many people, like we put this on ourselves. Because when we change that it just opens up possibilities. And I think that's when we start building better businesses. And that's what yeah, more of us need to do is build better businesses, build better systems, build things that work for a more inclusive society. Yeah, and I think
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is
Mm.
things that people say, "Oh, well, that's easy. You can just do it." And I think those maybe are the things that you really should look at having some, okay, fine, that's easy for you, but first of all, I have to learn how to do it. And then I'm going to go through a couple of rabbit holes because I got distracted. Like, no, that's easy for you. So great. I'm going to give you money and I'm going to do this other thing that's easy for me, but people are like, oh, it's easy. Just do it. Not always.
Identify your strengths and lean into them. Outsource the rest if you can. I mean, there's some things we need to be on top of. We need to at least understand our numbers, but it doesn't mean we have to do the numbers. There's always a way to be involved while somebody else is doing the thing. I'm a big fan of leaning into your strengths. We don't have to be all rounders. We weren't all born to put on this earth so that we could all do everything. That's a ridiculous notion. So let's lean into our strengths. And I've come across a statistic that was shared with me recently that we are 500% more likely to be entrepreneurs if we have ADHD. 100% more likely to be an entrepreneur. If you're listening or watching to this right now, because if you're an entrepreneur,
500%. That's huge
Yep.
stat, and I believe it.
Hmm.
Because entrepreneurs
it
have
makes
to
sense.
think differently. We're not
Yep.
built to just, be an employee and focus on the 9 to 5 and clock out and move on with our lives. Like, entrepreneurs just do things differently, think differently, want more, see things, are differently. Yeah, I think we're
Hmm.
probably more in that stat than we realize.
And the neurodivergent mind able to just like think all these ways. Like if you want someone to brainstorm, get someone with ADHD, and 3 hours later you'll probably find one good idea that you
Yes.
can do, but there'll be so much.
Yes. And we don't just think differently, we think faster. Apparently, our brain, I don't know why I'm saying our, but the ADHD brain thinks 6 times faster than a non ADHD brain. And I have another one for dyslexia, which I think is also connected with, it's certainly a neurodivergence. There are 4 times more millionaire entrepreneurs as dyslexic, who are dyslexic. There's an element of success in this superpower. And rather than this being a stigma and something that we have to carry on our shoulders, isn't it time for neurodiversity to be the superpower, to be recognized as the superpower that it is?
Exactly right. And I think the other thing too is when you do live with some sort of neurodivergence, it means you have to operate in the world a little differently. You've got to figure things out that other people don't, because other people just fit the mold, toe the line, do what they're told to do, get the project done. It's not an issue. Where you have to work differently. You have to gather people to help you. You've got to do to just make it through school to start with in life, right? So you have to think differently from day one, and you've got to figure out what works. And that's, I think, what leads to so much more success later, because you've already built systems that other people have never even had to think of before, because they were able to just follow the mold, where you had to figure out how you fit in and what you need to do to become successful. And I think that's where the success comes for those millionaire entrepreneurs that are neurodivergent, for sure. Big part of it. It's a fascinating conversation, and I love that we get to have this type of conversation on this podcast. So, Dr. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us on this. It's so important to raise this awareness, so that as we, keep building businesses, we think about how to build better ones, more inclusive ones, with better systems that work for more people, and have better conversations, because at the end of the day, I think what Vicky brought up earlier about communication is the most important part. So let's talk to each other, let's figure out what we need, let's support, let's grow together, let's collaborate, because collaboration is another superpower. And yeah, let's have more of these conversations. So thank you for sharing your expertise, your knowledge, wisdom with us on Resilient Entrepreneurs.
Thank you for the great questions. I really enjoyed it. And sometimes just this is ADHD, but you start talking about things and it leads to another thing and another thing, and that's ADHD.
Yeah, makes you fantastic to talk to. So don't stop. Thank you so much.